Symphorian was not killed quickly. Instead, they hammered a cold iron hook through his side and lifted him high into the air. The young martyr hung there, his ribs pierced and flesh torn as red life seeped out. The crowd around him fell silent in horror as he lifted trembling hands to heaven and began to pray through the agony. This was Saint Symphorian's doom, brutal and unforgettable. Saint Symphorian of Autun is a name you might not know, but his story is one of the most brutal in early Christian history. A Christian youth of noble birth in Roman Gaul, he dared to defy the pagan state religion at a time when doing so meant death. His unwavering faith made him a martyr, the first of Gaul, and his savage execution was meant to warn others. In the next minutes, we will witness the horrors inflicted on a boy for the crime of worshipping God. Prepare yourself, for this tale is both chilling and profound. It was roughly 178 AD, and the Roman Empire spanned the known world. In the city of Autun, grand temples and wealth masked a dark undercurrent. Christianity was illegal, and the faithful had been hunted for years. Symphorian's family, though noble and respected, quietly followed the new faith, teaching him to worship in secret despite his Roman education. By this time, persecution of Christians was intensifying. News had reached Autun of martyrs in nearby cities. The local governor, Heraclius, was vigilant and ruthless toward anyone who refused to honor Rome's god. To the Romans, an idol was more than a statue. It was the symbol of their power. During festivals, every citizen was expected to venerate the gods as proof of loyalty. When the statue of Cybele passed by the square, a bystander asked Symphorian if he would bow to the goddess. He refused outright. Boldly, he declared that he worshipped only the true God, not the idols of Rome. Some witnesses even claimed he demanded a hammer to destroy the statue on the spot. The crowd gasped as guards immediately seized him. The next moment, Symphorian was dragged before Governor Heraclius. The proconsul glared down at the frightened boy and offered him mercy if he would sacrifice to Cybele, even promising wealth and honor. Symphorian refused. Calmly, he told Heraclius that the governor might rule his body, but not his soul. Enraged, the governor condemned him at once. The sentence was cold and merciless. Symphorian would be tortured and killed at dawn as a warning to all. At sunrise, Symphorian was dragged before the assembled crowd in the city square. The first phase of his torture began with the scourge. Soldiers tied him to a pillar and lashed his bare back with leather straps studded with metal points, each crack of the whip sounding like thunder. Symphorian collapsed under the blows, flesh ripped open and blood pouring. Yet even as agony consumed him, he whispered prayers with every breath. For each strike he endured, his devotion only seemed stronger. But this was just the beginning. They bound Symphorian to a wooden frame. Executioners brought forth heavy iron hooks. One by one, they pressed a hook against his side and drove it through flesh and muscle. Blood spurted from the wound with each agonizing insertion. Then they hauled him upright so that he hung by the hook. His body jerked as it caught its full weight. The crowd moaned in horror. Symphorian struggled for air, each breath a stab of pain. Yet even in this living nightmare, he lifted his eyes to heaven and prayed aloud. The horror of his fate was overwhelming, but the martyr's spirit did not break. And then came the final blow. The executioner lifted a sword and swung it with brutal precision. In an instant, Symphorian's agony was over. His breath came once more, then he fell silent forever. The market square that had buzzed with life now held only silent witnesses. The brutal spectacle had shaken even the hardened soldiers. In the hush, some bystanders wept quietly. Among them was Symphorian's mother, Augusta, who had been forced to watch from the ramparts above. In her native tongue, she offered a final encouragement, a plea for her son to remember God as he faced his fate. Believers crept forward. They had been waiting nearby in fear. At last, they retrieved Symphorian's bloodied body. Wrapped in linen, his remains were carried outside the city wall and laid to rest by a quiet spring. For now there were no songs or honors, only hushed prayers for the brave boy's soul. Over the coming years, his story spread among the Christians. Though Rome had tried to erase him, Symphorian was honored as a martyr. A small church was built on the spot of his execution in autumn. His sacrifice, a boy who hung on iron hooks and prayed to the end, became a symbol of enduring faith. Even today, some pilgrims visit Autun to remember the son who gave everything for his God. Saint Symphorian's story is more than a historical account of torture. It's a mirror reflecting human extremes. On one side, senseless cruelty, a ruler who ordered a courageous boy to be flayed for refusing an idol. On the other, unbreakable faith, a frightened teenager who prayed in the face of unimaginable pain. This tale forces us to ask, how far would you go to stand up for your beliefs? Would you have the strength to face such horror? History is filled with barbaric acts, yet we often believe ourselves above such cruelty. Symphorian's martyrdom reminds us that fanaticism and brutality can lurk in any age. In a world that values conformity, his courage still speaks across the millennia. Ultimately, his blood teaches us about the true cost of conscience. Would you, like Symphorian, lift your eyes to heaven when everything else demands you bow? The darkest chapters of history often carry the brightest lessons. By remembering the suffering of martyrs, we honor those who chose faith over fear. Let Saint Symphorian's courage inspire you to question the choices you would make under pressure, and to hold on to what you believe is right. Thank you for joining us on this dark journey through history. How does Saint Symphorian's story strike you? Are you outraged by the cruelty, or inspired by his faith? Let us know your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. If you found this story compelling, remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history's most chilling and fascinating tales. If you thought this tale was horrifying, brace yourself for our next episode. We will tell the story of another martyr whose torture was even more gruesome. A man who was slowly torn apart as his own intestines were pulled from his body. If Symphorian's fate chills you, wait until you hear what comes next. Until next time, stay curious and remember, even in our darkest moments, courage can shine through.